Revealed, 13 spine-chilling disappearances that defy explanation and haunt the unseen in the heart of Maplewood, Ohio. The fall air crackled with a tension that twisted the festive spirit into something unnerving. Banners hung from lamp posts, banners that at first glance seemed to invite revelry. Welcome to the annual Halloween festival. But what residents whispered about was something different. 13 families had vanished without a trace, leaving behind eerie questions and heart-wrenching sorrow. Flickering jack-o'-lanterns offered only a dim light to cloak the shadow of dread lurking in every crevice of the town. Parents gripped their children a little tighter. Laughter hung uncomfortably as it strayed too close to fear. Every autumn, the festival had been a celebration of life and community, but this year, it felt like a masquerade of buried horrors. Kids flitted about in their costumes, but beneath the colorful makeup and sparkly capes, Sarah could feel nervous glances exchanged, hearsay echoing in hushed tones. She watched her young son Ethan beam with excitement while her heart clenched, a maternal instinct driven by a gnawing fear that left her breathless. As she looked around, her gaze fell upon a group of parents huddled together, their faces pale and concerned. She could hear the fragments of soft-spoken accusations. It must be connected. Someone must know something. Suddenly, a chill raced through her. It was the first strange element of the night. The festival's enchanting atmosphere gave way to an unsettling sensation. Ethan squeezed her hand, his small fingers trembling. With a tight smile, she reassured him, though her heart raced with the very real shadows of uncertainty. The town's once cherished safety was slipping away, and she couldn't shake the dread that perhaps she was fighting a losing battle. As the evening wore on and the skies darkened, Sarah lost sight of Ethan. Just for a moment, her attention diverted by the hypnotic sway of the ghost storyteller. But when she turned back, panic flooded her veins. Ethan! The festive music twisted into a haunting echo as she pushed through the throng of masked figures, searching, breathless. Every pumpkin grin became a grotesque reminder of a parent's worst nightmare. A lump formed in her throat as her frantic voice called out, "Ethan, before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. The crowd's laughter faded into silence, replaced by the thudding rhythm of her panic. Her heart was a loud drum, echoing in her ears as she fought through the sea of costumes, the shadows of the past rearing like specters. It was as if the festival had become a labyrinth of the lost. She found Sarah, a divorcee with a knack for reading people's thoughts, who clasped her hand. "We need to find him, Sarah. We can't lose anyone else. Not anymore." They joined forces with others: Dan, the tech-savvy teen armed with gadgets, and Mark, the sturdy ex-soldier. As they plunged into the investigation, rumors whispered of an abandoned military base nearby, a place of experiments gone awry. It felt like a dreadful truth loomed over them, and questions circled like vultures. What if their town's charm was just a mask for darkness? As the group dared to dig into decades-old secrets, Sarah discovered something deeply unsettling: that the ties between Maplewood's past and its present were all too thin. They spoke of ghosts and past wounds as if discussing the weather, but Sarah felt it creeping closer, wrapping around her heart, drawing her into the shadows. But just then, a scream tore the night. Apart, a chilling sound that curled the hairs on the back of her neck. The ground trembled underfoot as desperation gripped her tighter. What lay ahead was more than answers. It was a confrontation with the unknown, a chance to reclaim not only Ethan but the very essence of their community. As Sarah stood on the brink of uncovering the intertwined fates of the missing families, the night deepened, and her resolve overshadowed her fears. Would they escape the grip of the darkness that had taken too much already? The answer lurked, waiting to be unmasked in the shadows. The scream echoed like a wailing siren, sending shivers through the tight-knit group. In that moment, all thoughts of the festival's carefree spirit vanished, swallowed by pure terror. Sarah's body reacted before her mind could catch up, adrenaline pumping through her veins, propelling her forward. She exchanged desperate glances with Mark, who tightened his grip on the flashlight, eyes darting to locate the source of the cry. It came from the old fountain, Dan shouted, his voice barely cutting through the pandemonium. They rushed toward the sound, the pulsing glow of lanterns flickering like fireflies around them. Drunken laughter, once so vibrant, now felt ominous, the joviality around them mocking the fear in their hearts. Shadows danced, shifting and swaying under the ethereal glow, as they rushed through throngs of oblivious festival-goers, now mere ghosts in Sarah's mind. As they drew near the fountain, an unsettling sight met their eyes. A crowd had gathered, faces carved in horror. Sarah's heart dropped as she pushed forward, her instincts pulling her through. She finally made it to the front, and there a little girl lay on the ground, clutching her sobbing doll, her costume a tattered fairy outfit stained with dirt. A few concerned adults knelt beside her, soothing her while Police Officer James stood stern, his face lined with dread. "Where's your family?" he asked gently, but the girl's silent gaze simply widened. "What happened?" Sarah managed to choke out, but her words were lost amidst the murmurs of onlookers, their faces painted with a blend of sympathy and fear. "She was just playing by the old bass," a woman whispered, her voice trembling. Then she just screamed. The mention of the old military base sent icy tendrils of dread crawling up Sarah's back. The echoes of the rumors whispered through her mind like forgotten memories. It loomed there, a silent sentinel of secrets untold, and the fears that had buried themselves deep were now rising, bubbling to the surface like a noxious gas. Before she could process the implications, the girl bolted upright, her wide eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "I saw him," she cried out, eyes darting as if trying to find the words that made sense. "The man by the woods, he had a shadow." Mark bent down. "A man? What kind of man?" But the girl only shook her head vigorously. "A bad man." Her voice rose, filled with anguish. "He told me to be quiet, and then I forgot everything." The crowd murmured louder now, confusion and fear mingling. The story of the base, once faded, was resurrected with every passing second. "This can't be happening," Dan said, glancing at Sarah. "There's a connection, a bad man's shadow." A new thought struck Sarah with chilling clarity. Could the disappearances, the allure of the festival, the depth of the shadows, it all tied back to this? With a sudden resolve, Sarah turned to the group. "We have to go to the base. Now." "No," Mark protested. "We need to call the police, like now." "This is insane, Sarah." "No," she insisted, grounding her voice with urgency. "The longer we wait, the deeper the shadows grow. The connection runs deeper than we realize. If Ethan is there, if any of them are," she didn't need to finish her thought. A tense silence enveloped them, filled with the weight of possibilities. The festival was meant to be a celebration, but now it felt like the maw of a great beast, ready to devour anything caught in its path. "Wait," Dan suddenly shouted, pulling out his gadget. "What if I can tap into the base's old security feeds? Maybe we can see what's really going on there." His suggestion sparked a flicker of hope in Sarah's chest, a small flame against the growing storm. As they began to formulate their plan, shadows shifted once more in the flickering light, and they all felt it, the unmistakable feeling of being watched. "Are we sure we want to know what's there?" Mark asked, hesitating, his brow furrowed. "Are we going to keep running from it?" Sarah shot back, determination blazing in her eyes. "It's time we face the truth." With that, their decision made, they turned. Their backs on the festival, its joys slipping away, replaced by a frigid resolve. As they made their way toward the base, the sound of laughter faded into an unsettling stillness, leaving in its wake the silent knowledge that something waited for them, eager and unknown in the shadows ahead. What would they find at the military base? And more importantly, what had the shadows been concealing all along? The path to the military base wound through a darkened wood, every rustle in the underbrush making Sarah's pulse quicken. Each heartbeat thundered in her ears, drowning out the distant echoes of the festival they had left behind. "Are we really doing this?" Mark muttered, his voice a mix of disbelief and fear. He glanced behind him, as if expecting something to leap from the shadows. "We could be walking right into a trap. We can't ignore this," Sarah shot back, urgency lacing her words. "That little girl, she's been touched by whatever is happening here. We have to find out what is going on. Dan walked ahead, his gadget tightly held in his hands, eyes scanning every flicker of movement among the trees. Just give me a minute, he said, fingers dancing over the buttons. The old feeds should still be operational. The three friends forged deeper, breaking through the underbrush into a clearing where the base loomed ahead like a monstrous relic from another time. Crumbling walls and shattered windows loomed ominously under the pale moonlight. An oppressive air clung around them, thick and suffocating. I feel like we're walking into a horror movie, Mark said, halting a few feet from the threshold. The weight of apprehension hung around him like fog, threatening to consume every ounce of courage he had left. Stay close, Sarah urged, her instincts kicking into high gear. And keep your eyes peeled. As they approached the entrance, Dan stopped abruptly, eyes wide with realization. Wait a second, this place was decommissioned because of something, wasn't it? Something about experiments or something darker. Let us save the theories for later, Sarah said. We need to see what is happening inside. The door creaked open with a loud groan as they pushed it, the sound echoing like a siren in the silenced night. They stepped inside, flashlights illuminating walls that bore the scars of neglect and mystery. First floor looks empty, Dan whispered, scanning the long hallway lined with peeling paint and the smell of mildew. But if those feeds are right, we might be able to access the lower levels. As they moved deeper into the base, the atmosphere thickened. It was as if the walls themselves were suffused with whispered secrets. Flashes of shadow flickered just outside their line of sight, sending prickles across Sarah's skin. Did you see that? Mark asked, voice nearly cracking. He stopped, gripping his flashlight as though it were a life preserver. See what? Sarah replied, her heart racing as she tried to focus on the path ahead. Just over there, he pointed into the darkness, trembling slightly. Dan's face paled, and he turned to the source of Mark's gaze. Guys, I think we're not alone. Just as the weight of those words settled over them, a loud clang echoed through the hall, reverberating through the air with an intensity that cut the silence like a knife. Sarah felt her blood run cold. What was that? She breathed, glancing back at Mark and Dan, who shared equally haunted expressions. Let us get out of here, Mark suggested, his voice barely more than a whisper. No. Sarah's voice was firm, fueled by determination. We came here to find the truth. Whatever that was, we can't run now. We have to find out what is happening. As they shared a breath, the lights flickered above, plunging them into darkness for a heartbeat. When they returned, shadows warped the space around them, longer and unnatural, shifting and bending. Then, like a sudden storm, a figure stepped from the shadows, cloaked in darkness, its face obscured. I've been waiting, it hissed, voice dripping with malice. Cold dread settled deep, and the weight of fear could no longer be ignored. What had they awakened in the bowels of the military base? And who or what was this figure that stood before them? The figure loomed, a specter in the dim light, and Sarah's courage threatened to falter. Mark shifted backward instinctively, his breath hitching in his throat. Dan, however, stood frozen, eyes like saucers reflecting terror as the figure stepped closer, cloaked in shadow yet radiating an aura of unspeakable power. What do you want? Sarah demanded, her voice steady despite the throbbing in her chest. Its lips curled into a sinister smile, revealing teeth that seemed too sharp, too pointed. You shouldn't have come here. This place, it holds memories you cannot comprehend. You speak of wanting the truth, yet the truth is a heavy price. Who are you? Dan whispered, struggling to find his voice. Does it matter? The figure tilted its head, shadows cascading over its form like smoke. You seek answers to questions that would drive you mad, but the girl? Oh, she is special. She is the key. What do you mean? Mark's pulse raced as he stepped back further, the fear palpable in his voice. The figure laughed low, guttural, sending chills racing down their spines. The girl you speak of has been marked. She is part of a bigger plan, and you are merely pawns in this game. Sarah felt her mind whirl. A game? Their eagerness to help had entwined them in something far more dangerous than they realized. What do you want with her? She pressed, desperate for clarity. Her purity, the figure hissed, is a vessel. They need her for what is to come. The foundation laid here amplifies the essence of what she truly is. Who is they? Dan interjected. What are you talking about? The figure's demeanor shifted, its tone turned sharp. Enough questions. You've lingered too long. With a sudden, swift motion, it pointed toward the darkened hallway behind them. Leave this place while you still can. Next time I may not be so generous. What if we don't? Mark's voice trembled, balancing on the brink of defiance and terror. Then you will learn in ways you cannot imagine. The shadows around the figure thickened, twisting as its form began to dissipate, fading into the darkness, but not before one last chilling line echoed through the hall. Run, little mice. The hunt has only just begun. As the words faded, the lights flickered again, revealing the hallway depths where their foundation of reality shivered. Panic surged through Sarah, and in an instant, the gravity of their situation settled around her like a vice. Guys, we need to find that girl, she urged fiercely, gripping Mark's arm. But deep down, part of her feared what they might find. Part of her screamed that they were in over their heads. Where do we even start? Dan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. We follow the main corridor, Sarah said sharply. The basement should connect to the old control rooms. If there are still feeds working, we may find something to help us understand, and maybe a way to save her. With a nod, they moved forward, tension exploding with every creaking floorboard beneath their feet as the deeper shadows loomed ever larger. Suddenly, a faint cry echoed in the silence, threading through the air like a desperate whisper. The haunting sound reached deep into Sarah's heart. Was it the girl? Did you hear that? Mark exclaimed, his eyes flickering with a mix of hope and dread. Yeah, Dan replied, trembling. What should we do? Follow it, Sarah said, steely resolve in her voice. It felt reckless, yet she couldn't ignore the pull toward the sound. The three pressed forward, fear-stricken yet emboldened, their footsteps echoing in a rhythm of urgency against the backdrop of encroaching darkness. But as they rounded the corner, the air chilled, thickening like something sentient, waiting. Then, from the gloom, they saw a movement, a flicker just beyond what they could fully grasp. Sarah's heart raced as anticipation and dread collided in a terrifying dance. Is that? Before she could finish, another clamor erupted from somewhere unseen, drowning out her words, a screech of metal, of something breaking free. Had they unwittingly stepped deeper into a nightmare? Or was salvation just out of reach? With their fate hanging in the balance and the truths getting darker, they were about to discover just how far the rabbit hole went. The clamor grew louder, each metallic shriek echoing down the corridor like an ominous warning. Sarah felt the chill seep into her bones as her instincts screamed for her to turn back. Still, her foot moved forward, drawn by a mixture of dread and a burning need to uncover the truth. Mark hesitated, glancing over his shoulder at the stretching shadows. What if it's a trap? His voice shook, revealing the terror he tried so hard to suppress. We can't think like that, Sarah shot back, her tone sharp. If we turn around now, we might never forgive ourselves. Dan nodded, scrambling to keep up. Yeah, we have to keep going. She might be in trouble. The flashlight flickered in Sarah's grip, casting erratic beams across the walls. Each pulse of light played tricks on her mind, turning the mundane into the grotesque, and the shadows danced like harbingers of despair. Another sound, a whimper, barely audible yet unmistakably human. Please help me. The voice, muffled yet filled with desperation, spurred them forward. The sound came from a room at the end of the corridor, its doors slightly ajar, the frame barely allowing a sliver of light to escape. Is that? Mark barely breathed, his body tensing. It has to be, Sarah affirmed, racing ahead despite the buzzing anxiety in her gut. She shoved the door open, the hinges creaking ominously, as if warning them of the horrors within. Inside, the space was cluttered with abandoned machinery, dust-covered consoles, and shadows pooling in the corners. In the dim light, they spotted her, a girl tied to an old chair, her eyes wide with fear and confusion. Sarah? She gasped, recognition flashing across her face even in her distress. You have to, but before she could finish, the shadows surged. An unseen force slammed the door shut, plunging them back into an oppressive darkness that pressed down, suffocating. Get back, Mark shouted, instinctively moving to shield Sarah and Dan. The air felt electric, licking at their skin with unseen daggers. Stay close, Sarah called, her heart racing. She fumbled for her flashlight, the beam darting across the room, yet illuminating nothing but floating dust and distant fears. "We're not leaving without you. Sarah, watch out." Dan's scream sliced through the chaos. Out of the void, a dark shape twisted into form, a figure materializing from the very shadows they had feared. It was not the same specter they had encountered earlier, but something more grotesque, a horrific amalgamation of darkness given life, eyes glowing like twin coals set to devour. "Fools," it hissed, its voice echoing in mocking laughter as it reached toward them, fingers elongated and dripping with a darkness so thick it seemed to swallow the light whole. "You come seeking truth, yet you know only pain. Get back," Sarah yelled again, fueling all her strength into the command, but her voice quavered with doubt. Mark and Dan stood rigid, breath caught in their throats, as they faced a choice between fight or flight. And amid the chaos, the girl's voice squeaked through, "You must help me. I'm the key." A sickening realization washed over Sarah. If that creature was right, saving her could very well cost them everything. "Run," Mark shouted, but the girl's words haunted them still. They turned, adrenaline coursing through their veins, each footfall a frantic echo in the face of creeping dread. The hallway twisted behind them, shadows stretching to grasp their legs, and suddenly the light from the way they came flickered, then went out completely. Trapped. "Where do we go?" Dan cried, panic rising in his voice. "Back, we have to find another way out," Sarah insisted, her heart pounding. But the walls seemed to close in, suffocating in darkness. Just then, a loud crash resonated from the room behind them, sending a wave of terror crashing over Sarah's resolve. And in that terrifying moment, with shadows swirling around them like a vicious storm, the unseen hunted. Could they escape this nightmare? Or had they already become part of a story darker than they could ever fathom? Time was running out, and the hunt was on. The darkness tightened its grip like a vice, pulling them into its suffocating embrace. Just moments ago, they had dared to hope. Now, that hope flickered like the dying beam of Sarah's flashlight. With her heart racing and panic clawing at her throat, she pushed forward, desperate to find a way out. "Keep moving," Sarah shouted, though her voice trembled with uncertainty. The command felt hollow as they stood paralyzed, the shadows pulsating with sinister intent. "Sarah, we can't just run blindly." Mark's voice was strained, the fear in it palpable. "What if we go deeper into their no other choice?" She snapped back, adrenaline fueling her urgency. "We can't stay here." Suddenly, a rasping sound slithered through the air, echoing against the walls as if the very structure of the building was alive, breathing, watching. The three of them stood still, hearts pounding, straining to listen against the deafening silence that followed. Dan, his face pale and trembling, grabbed Sarah's arm. "What about her? We can't leave her behind. She said she was the key." The girl's voice rang in Sarah's ears, a haunting melody that tangled with the whir of danger. Was she truly the answer to this nightmare? Or just another illusion meant to lead them to destruction? "Listen," Sarah said, forcing calm into her racing heart. "If she's the key, then we need to figure out how to unlock this place together." Cautiously, they moved further down the corridor, the darkness swallowing their footsteps. Every noise seemed amplified, the whispering shadows mocked them. The uneven breathing of fear thrummed in their chests. At the end of the hall, they stumbled upon a door, old and rusted, but still standing. A sliver of light dared to escape from beneath it, beckoning them closer. "Should we?" Mark whispered, the hesitation hanging heavily in the air. "There's no going back now," Sarah replied, her throat tight. "We have to try." As they approached, the door creaked open, revealing a larger room filled with what looked like surveillance equipment and monitors blinking wildly. A chill settled over them, a sense of foreboding as they entered. On the screens, scenes of the building flickered, static shifted to reveal dark corners, hallways, and even a glimpse of the girl, still tied to the chair. A cold sweat trickled down Sarah's spine. "They've been watching us." "What does it mean?" Dan's voice shook, paler than before. Sarah squinted at the screens, trying to piece together the chaos. "Maybe they're watching everyone who comes here. What if this is how they trap us?" A sudden shriek echoed through the room, ricocheting off the walls. The creature from earlier materialized, coalescing from the shadows with an eerie grace, eyes gleaming wickedly. "Welcome," it crooned, a venomous delight slipping from its lips. You found my playroom. But you can't keep playing without the key. Get back, Mark shouted, lunging to put himself between Sarah and the looming terror. What do you want? Sarah shouted, fear igniting into anger. What do you want with us? The creature's laughter sent a shiver slicing through the room. You'll find out soon enough, dear Sarah. The key holds the truth of your desires and your fears. Sarah, we can't let it take us, Dan shouted, stepping back into a wall of monitors, the weight of despair crashing down. But before Sarah could respond, the lights flickered violently, plunging them into total darkness once more. Panic surged through her like a tidal wave. What now? Mark gasped, his breath coming out in jagged bursts. I don't know, she replied, the sinking dread pushing in on all sides. The walls felt like they were closing in. Through the darkness, the girl's voice echoed faintly, almost ethereal. Help me hold on, Sarah shouted, her voice fierce against the void. We have to find her. We have to find the truth. Just then, a loud, grating sound shattered the air. The doors slammed shut, sealing them off from both escape and from the darkness. A new sense of urgency ignited within Sarah. She couldn't let fear consume them. They were on the edge of uncovering everything if there was still time. Where's the key? She breathed, looking at the deepening shadows, expecting an answer but receiving only the cold bite of silence. A haunting realization gripped her. Truth and terror were entwined, and the closer they got to one, the deeper they fell into the other. And as the darkness whispered, hungry for their resolve, Sarah knew one thing: they must uncover the truth before it was too late. But would the truth set them free, or finally seal their fate? The darkness pressed against them, loitering like a predator, eager to pounce. Sarah's heart thudded wildly in her chest as she clutched Mark and Dan, fear coursing through her veins. This wasn't just a game anymore. The stakes had risen too high, and time felt like sand slipping through her fingers. Sarah Mark's voice trembled, cutting through the stillness. What are we going to do? Listen, Sarah replied urgently, trying to focus. The girl, her voice. We have to follow it. As if summoned by her words, a dim light flickered in the far corner of the room. It pulsed rhythmically like a heartbeat, beckoning with a magnetic force. They moved toward it, instinct driving them to seek whatever might lie ahead, tethered to the flicker of hope it represented. Is it the exit? Dan whispered, his eyes scanning the endless shadows. I think so, Sarah breathed, squinting to discern what lay ahead. The closer they got, the clearer the girl's voice became. Help, please. Her voice twisted through the air, a plea laced with desperation. The trio pressed on, the light intensifying, illuminating more than just their path. It illuminated the walls, revealing markings that twisted like tortured vines, words scrawled in jagged strokes. Fear the watcher. Trust no shadow. What does it mean? Mark asked, glancing nervously at the walls as if they could reach out and grab him. Sarah opened her mouth to respond when a shudder raced through the room, accompanied by a low growl that reverberated like thunder. You shouldn't have come here, the voice echoed, chilling them to the bone. No turning back now, Sarah muttered, gripping the edge of the nearest monitor for support. The light flickered again, revealing a series of ancient photographs pinned haphazardly to a board. Faces, blurred and obscured, stared back at her with vacant eyes. A chill clenched her, memories of missing persons plastered across the news flashing in her mind. These are the missing, she gasped. With shaking hands, she examined the forlorn faces. Each picture appeared more haunting than the last, each a reminder of the lives once lived, now swallowed by this unsettling place. Who are you? She wondered aloud, her voice barely a whisper. I am the keeper of secrets, the voice responded, dripping with disdain. And you are but pawns in my game. A wave of icy dread washed over Sarah. What game? She demanded, forcing the words out against the tide of horror curling in her gut. But before the voice could reply, the air around them shimmered unnaturally, and the monitors blinked violently. In that flickering chaos, she saw those faces again, their eyes wide with terror, mouths open in silent screams, as if trying to communicate a warning that she couldn't grasp. Panic tightened Sarah's chest. We have to get out of here, she urged, but it felt like shouting into a vacuum. Her plea echoed disturbingly, swallowed by the growing shadows that edged closer. Mark turned toward the door, now a threat more than a way out, a solid barrier of dread. What if it doesn't let us go? He asked, his panic staining his voice with despair. The key, Sarah murmured, piecing the fragments together. It has to be here. The girl, she asked the key. We need to find her. As they pushed through, closer to the light, it began to pulse faster, illuminating a doorway hidden away behind dark metal and rust. The girl's voice now filled their minds like an echoing chant, promising revelation but clothed in foreboding. Are you ready? Sarah challenged her friends, determination flaring in her gut, even as fear clutched at her heart. Ready as we'll ever be, Mark replied, steel creeping into his voice. With shaky breaths, they stepped toward the light, fear merging with hope. But just as they crossed through the threshold, the room shuddered violently, a deafening roar of sound enveloping them as the darkness howled in rage. You cannot escape, it screamed, consuming all light, plunging them into absolute blackness. In that emptiness, they held hands tightly, hearts thudding in synchronized terror. Would they find the girl? The key? Or were they just another set of faces destined to haunt this place? As shadows swirled around them, Sarah clung to the thought that somewhere in this darkness lay the truth, if only they could uncover it before it consumed them whole. And then, a glimmer of light broke through, shimmering just ahead. But as they stumbled toward it, the shadows roared louder, as if holding their breath for what was yet to come. Could the truth be found? Or was it merely another lure, drawing them deeper into despair? The moment they stepped into the light, the air shifted, crackling like electricity. It was a tunnel narrow and dark, with stone walls slick with moisture. Sarah felt the weight of dread coiling tighter around her, but the light pulled her forward, brighter than anything they'd seen in this nightmare. The girl's voice echoed again, but now it seemed closer, clearer. Help, please. Each word was a desperate plea that resonated through the passage, wrapping around them like a vine. They had to follow. Which way? Mark asked, looking back towards the shadows writhing behind them, a dark compass spinning wildly. Just keep going, Sarah urged, fear tinging her voice. We can't stop now. As they moved deeper into the corridor, the air grew heavy with a damp chill, thickening until it felt like they were wading through a cold mist. It clung to their faces, refusing to let go. She could sense the darkness looming behind them, feel its hunger and insatiable desire to reclaim its lost prey. But the flickering light called to them. It was no longer distant. It was almost tangible. There, Dan shouted, almost tripping as he pointed at the end of the tunnel. A shimmering figure stood just beyond the threshold, glowing faintly. Their hearts raced in unison. It was her, the girl from the whispers. Her long, tangled hair framed a pale face, wide eyes shimmering with unshed tears. But something felt off. No ordinary child looked so lost, so burdened by unseen weights. Help me, she cried again, reaching out a tiny hand, fingers trembling. They want tea, let me go. Who want tea? Sarah stepped forward, instinctively feeling the pull towards the child, against all rationality. The Watchers, the girl whispered, voice quaking. They're coming. You mustn't look back. A tremor ran through Sarah as she recalled the chilling scrawled warning on the walls. Fear the Watcher. Was she speaking of the same entity? Time seemed to halt, her mind racing with the implications. Suddenly, the shadows behind them pulsed sinisterly, surging forth with a guttural growl that vibrated through the air. The unmistakable sound of something living, something foul, chased them down the corridor. Run, Sarah screamed, her voice spilling into the cramped space, spurring them into action. The girl's pleading face burned into her vision as they dashed towards the glowing figure. Desperation fueled their flight, each footfall a thunderous reminder that whatever hunted them was closing in. As they bolted closer, the shimmering light flickered and dimmed, the girl glancing back nervously. You have to hurry. The key, find the key. What key? Mark panted, glancing back as shadows writhed like serpents, whispering dark thoughts that clawed at their sanity. There, Dan shouted, pointing to a rusted door nestled against the tunnel wall. It stood out strangely, covered in strange symbols glowing faintly in cadence with their hearts, whispering promises of safety. The key must be there. But even as they neared it, the shadows lunged, their howls morphing into a cacophony of pain and rage. The girl quivered, the shimmering glow fading, her eyes wide with terror. Trust no shadow. Sarah felt a pull, an invisible rope tethering her to that dreadful darkness. We can't let it take us. We're almost there. They reached the door, hands trembling against the cold metal. But when they grasped the handle, it burned like ice, sending jolts of terror through their bones. Open it, Sarah screamed, but the shadows clawed at the edges of their vision, threatening to engulf them whole. They pushed as one, the door trembling beneath their weight until the air shattered with a deafening crash as it swung open, releasing a blinding light that swallowed the encroaching darkness. Go, now. The girl's voice pierced through the chaos. In that final moment, uncertainty washed over Sarah. What lay beyond the door? Safety or another trap? Risking everything, they stepped through, but as the threshold swallowed them, laughter cold and mocking echoed behind them, filling the void like a deadly promise. What awaited them on the other side? And could they trust the girl, or would her warning come too late? The blinding light enveloped them as they stumbled into the unknown. Sarah shielded her eyes, heart racing. When the glare faded, they found themselves in a vast, open space that starkly contrasted the claustrophobic tunnel they had just fled. All around them lay crumbling ruins, ancient stone structures half-eaten by the earth and time. Vines climbed the walls like serpents, and the air was thick with the scent of damp earth mixed with an inexplicable sweetness that felt both inviting and sinister. What is this place? Mark whispered, stepping gingerly on the uneven ground. I don't know, Sarah replied, her voice trembling slightly as she scanned the eerie surroundings. But we can't stay here. We need to keep moving. But the moment the words slipped from her lips, the ground trembled beneath them. A low rumble echoed through the ruins, making the stones groan in protest. They darted forward, the remnants of an ancient civilization around them whispering secrets long forgotten. The flickering shadows kept at bay, but those whispers wove darker stories. As they ventured deeper into this ghostly realm, a chill crept over Sarah. Do you feel that? She asked, her breath quickening. I do. It's like we're being watched, Dan replied, glancing nervously around. Suddenly, a sound broke through the silence, a faint melody, clear and haunting. It danced in the air like a breeze, sweet yet unsettling. The girl's voice echoed in Sarah's mind. Trust no shadow. The melody beckoned them, an invisible thread pulling them towards a grand archway at the end of a crumbling corridor. That same glow they had seen before flickered just beyond it, pulsating like a heartbeat, luring them closer. Is that her? Mark asked, but he hesitated. Anxiety clenched in his gut. Maybe it's a way out, Sarah suggested, but uncertainty dripped from her words. Silence wrapped itself around them once more, punctuated only by the lingering strains of the eerie tune that tugged at their sanity. They approached the archway, and the melody grew louder, wrapping around their minds. But as Sarah stepped through, her foot struck something solid on the other side, and she faltered, staring down in horror. Scattered bones lay strewn across the ground, small and fragile, like remnants of those who had come before. The realization crashed hard. We need to go back, she gasped, terror clawing its way up her spine. But the moment they turned, a shadow flickered behind them, an amorphous shape, stretching and twisting until it formed into a figure dressed in dark robes, its face hidden in the depths of its hood. Where do you think you're going? It hissed, voice like nails scratching against stone. Stay away, Dan shouted, but his voice cracked, fear surrendering to panic. The darkness surged, reaching for them with icy fingers, and the haunting melody morphed into a cacophony of whispers. Sarah's heart beat wildly, a drum pounding a frantic rhythm. We can't let it take us. We need to find the key. But then the whispers turned clearer, forming a single chilling phrase. The Watchers will not let you go, they spun back, and as the figure advanced, the walls of the ruins echoed with laughter, a cruel, mocking sound that made their skin crawl. Somewhere, buried within that darkness, lay the truth. But was that truth worth the price of discovery? Time tumbled into chaos. Shadows blocked their only exit, and the ethereal lights behind became indistinct as dread cloaked the ruins. The girl's image flickered before their eyes, trapped in an eternal struggle. I can't stay, she mouthed, fading as quickly as she appeared. Wait, what does the key unlock? Sarah screamed into the darkness. But as her voice echoed, the shadows surged forth, swallowing her words and drowning out any hope they might have had. What terrible fate awaited them next? And would they discover the key before it was too late, weighing their choices against the cost of knowledge? The cavernous expanse of the ruins seemed to pulse, alive with ominous energy, shadows enveloping them like a thick mist, threatening to suffocate all sense of hope. Sarah, Mark, and Dan stood shoulder to shoulder, determination splintering against the relentless fear coiling around them. "Where's the key?" Sarah yelled, urgency coursing through her veins as the chilling whispers echoed around them. "If that girl was right, we need to find it." Her voice hardened, a thin shield against the rising tide of despair. The shadows twisted malevolently, their mocking laughter weaving tightly around her heart. "We have to split up," Dan suggested, his voice barely a whisper over the cacophony of fear. "We can cover more ground." "No," Mark interjected sharply. Terror lurked in his eyes. "We need to stay together. We're stronger as a unit." But Sarah could feel time slipping through their fingers. Hesitation could cost them everything. "We're wasting time. The darkness moves, and we can't get trapped in it." With quick, measured breaths, they made a silent agreement, leaning closer into the unpredictability surrounding them. "Stick to the walls," Sarah commanded, her resolve shimmering like a beacon in the dark. "But we must keep our voices low." And with that, they set off, stepping carefully into the depths of the ruins, each step filled with the heavy weight of unspoken fears. The air grew colder, thickening with the shadows that wove intricate patterns along the stone. Each fleeting shadow seemed to dance mockingly, daring them to retreat. Sarah Mark whispered worriedly, glancing behind them to trace the lurking figures that just beyond their sight. "Focus," she replied, refusing to let despair seep into her voice. "We're looking for something, anything that feels different." Just as she spoke, a faint glimmer caught her eye, an uneven light spilling from a cracked stone wall. "Over here," Sarah urged, excitement mingling dangerously with dread. They swarmed toward the flickering light, heartbeats thudding loudly in their ears. Pushing aside centuries of dust, they stumbled upon a small altar, weary and cracked, yet it pulsed with a strange luminescence. On it lay dusty scrolls and wooden tokens intricately carved with symbols that glowed faintly. "This must be it, the key," Dan exclaimed, hearts racing, minds spinning. They fumbled through the scrolls, each rolling, unfurling secrets that hinted at the horrors entangled in the history of the base. It was all true, Sarah murmured, fear flooding her heart. Experimentation fueled by greed, they were after the purity of children, using their essence as fuel for something even darker. "And that girl," Mark gasped, eyes wide as he pieced it together. "We're here to save her." Before they could say more, a chill ran through the space, a shadow stretching beneath them, growing and compressing like a living entity, ready to snap around their throats. "Get ready," Sarah urged, clutching the scroll tightly, stepping away from the altar. "We don't have much time." But the shadows descended faster than they could react, whipping into a cyclone, cutting through the air with sharp cries of indignation. The specter emerged, cloaked in darkness once more, eyes glinting macabrely, an embodiment of the fears they now knew too well. "You fools," it hissed, weaving into their thoughts with seductive whispers. "You cannot escape what has been set in motion. This is our moment." Sarah shouted defiantly, raising the scroll aloft. "You want to take the girl. She is not your pawn." For a horrifying second, the room fell silent, the shadows enveloping them all in a deep, terrible stillness. But then, the creature shrieked, a sound that ripped through their minds, threatening to unravel their very sanity. "Destroy her," it raged, its voice growing fainter as the scroll glimmered white-hot in Sarah's grip. "Hold on," she screamed, fighting despair with newfound resolve, as the scroll burned brighter with a scorching light. "This is what we need. To free her." It felt as if the world was twisting, shadows swirling madly, panic trying to claw past their resolve. Now, in that breakthrough moment of brilliance, they thrust the scroll into the shadows, where it exploded in a blinding flash, surging brightness consuming the dark like a cleansing flame. The room shuddered, and the screams of the creature echoed wildly. The shadows ripped apart, and in the chaos, a figure materialized beside them, bathed in light. "The girl. You did it," she cried, relief washing over her features as tears streamed down her cheeks. "Thank you." The darkness lurked, pulsing dangerously, it knew betrayal. You want to get away, it hissed one final time, before dissolving into the shadows, leaving behind echoes of despair. Come on, Mark shouted, pulling Sarah and Dan toward the adjacent doorway, the only hint of safety now revealed. With the girl gripping tightly to Sarah's hand, they ran, no longer just escaping, but charging toward their new reality, a reality free of darkness. They burst into the outside world, surrounded by the kaleidoscopic light of the festival. Everything felt surreal, the warmth and laughter of townsfolk wrapping around them like a welcome return. "Mommy!" Ethan cried, rushing toward Sarah as if no shadow had ever dared to loom over their lives. "Ethan," she sobbed, wrapping her arms around him fiercely, promises slipping just from her lips. "I'm here, I'll always be here." From the corner of her eye, she caught the girl smiling serenely, dissipating like morning mist amongst the ebullient festival-goers, a guardian forever etched in their hearts. As the night unfolded, laughter filtered through the air, a celebration filled with love and relief. They had faced the darkness and emerged, carrying the stories of those lost, while vowing never to let shadows sweep through their lives again. "Never forget," Sarah whispered, clutching Ethan close as they turned toward the starlit sky, the future now unfurling promising before them. Moments held newfound weight, reminders beating strong against the backdrop of their shared ordeal, lives intertwined, their story written in the kaleidoscope of hope. Now, remember this moment. You need to subscribe immediately to witness these exclusive stories unfold. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and keep us thriving. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about how they conquered the shadows. Don't wait even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this heart-pounding conclusion. Your support matters more than you know.